Today we're going to talk about brakes, e-bike brakes, and why they're not made equal. You're off your nut. You fucking retard. Fucking dickhead. There's this myth about e-bikes and the fact that all brakes are created equal. Mechanical brakes will stop your e-bike, hydraulic brakes will stop your e-bike, certain brake pads are better than others, 2 pots are no better than 4 pots and 4 pots vice versa, and that clearly isn't true. Normally hear it from people that have only used 1 or 2, well, just one type of brake, normally mechanical. Mechanical's good enough, that's all you'll ever hear, and it's not. I'm going to explain why. This bike weighs, with its batteries on, pretty much 45-50 kilos, which is heavy, and then it's got me on top of it, which weighs 240 pounds. So back in the 70s, mechanical brakes would have been fine. They'd have been absolutely fine, because I'd have weighed 12 stone and the bike that I'd have been on would have weighed another, what we're looking at, 15 pounds. And then you could get away with mechanical brakes. They were good enough. There's less cars on the road, less traffic. But now times have changed, and anybody that thinks putting a mechanical brake, and this goes out to all you e-bike manufacturers, anybody that puts a mechanical brake on a bike that weighs over 30 kilos, well, over 20 kilos to be fair, you're off your nut. Back in the 1970s, when everybody weighed under 150 pounds and bikes weighed around about 15 pounds, you could get away with mechanical brakes. Times have changed. This bike alone weighs pretty much 80-90 pounds. I weigh another 240 pounds, and people are still putting mechanical brakes on these e-bikes, and anything over a 45 pound e-bike should automatically be fitted with hydraulic brakes. One of the odd things I saw the other day was Engwe have just released the EP275 or whatever it is, and it's 20 pounds lighter than the Engwe Engine Pro, or let's say for argument's sake the Engwe Engine X. It's 20 pound lighter. They fitted Tektro brakes with 180mm rotors on to a bike that weighs pretty much half the weight. I wouldn't say half, I'd say less than 3/4 of the weight. Which begs the question, if they're fitting those to that bike that's lighter, why aren't they fitting them to a bike that weighs heavier? Or why didn't they? And it all comes down to cost. The cost of putting sort of decent, I say decent, that Magora 4-piston brakes on a bike is ridiculous. It's out of the range of most of these Chinese e-bike companies. But on the Engwe Engine Pro, they did fit decent brakes. They did put Logans on, and they're a really good brake. They married them up with 160mm rotors, which was enough stopping power, to be fair. They could have gone a little bit further and put 180s on, but they didn't. So this is where it's all up in the air with brakes, and people having to modify brakes, because, not necessarily modify, but this is where they have to replace their brakes out when they buy these bikes. And you can argue all day long, well, you wanted a bike for £1,000, here it is, and this is what the quality of kit you get on it. Well, that's fair enough. But wouldn't it be better that you could order from the manufacturer better brakes at the build point? You know, just say like, I'm happy to pay an extra £50 to have better brakes on my bike. I'm happy to pay X amount to have a seat suspension post. I'm happy to pay for this better suspension all round. You know, you can build the bike that you want better, safer, because if you go right, I mean, I've just proved an example back there. Some absolute tard had just pulled out clean in front of me. No need to do that. No need. He didn't wait for me whatsoever. He saw me, he looked at me. And I've had now to cut out what was said to him because of all the swearing. So mechanical brakes, if you've got them, one of the upgrades that I normally see is these semi-hydraulic things. And I have to be honest with you, even I bought into them. Problem is, they're absolute dog shit. And wherever you look across the forums, people have bought them and they've broken within a few weeks, or they've stopped working within a few weeks. And I have to be honest with you, when I had them, they didn't break, they just didn't work very well. What really you should be looking at for braking on your e-bike. And we're going to be starting off with what kind of brakes are out there. So you've got your bog standard mechanical brakes that should never ever be fitted to any heavy electric bike whatsoever. Anything over 25 kilos, these should never be fitted. They're shite. And then we get on to 2-piston hydraulic entry level, and they're pretty good. They stop your bike in a linear fashion, which is ideally what you want. A good example of the Logan brakes that Engwe put on their Engwe Engine Pro, but oddly didn't fit to the X, which was basically the same bike, but they fitted that with mechanical brakes. Then you get into 4-piston brakes, and the ones that I've used in the past are Magura MT5Es, and they're really good. They have some major, so I've been punched in the face, they're that good. But they're expensive. To rig your e-bike out with a pair of those is typically going to be a couple of £100 minimum. And do you think they're worth it? Well, I think they're worth it, because it's like anything with stopping. You want the best thing to stop you. You want the best tyres to stop you. This is why I won't have cheap tyres on my bike. So where's the middle ground? Well, the middle ground are the 2-piston hydraulic brake sets. And there's plenty online. You can swap your mechanical ones out for a cheap set, which come with fresh pads in, for around about £60 off, straight off of Amazon. You can have them the next day, and they're pretty easy to fit. And if you're fitting them, what you have to watch out for is what connector they are. And pretty much most of the time Engwe will be using the SM connector. I'll put a little image up in the link of what you want to be looking for up in the video. They're pretty good. They're bog standard, but they're pretty good. Next up, you really want to be looking at Tektro 2-piston brake sets with decent rotors. If you're going to go to the trouble of swapping your brake set, you might as well swap your rotors out. Which brings me to the next bit. How good's a rotor? So 180mm on these is plenty good enough. If you've got 2-piston brakes on, it might be worth swapping it up to about a 203mm. But if you've got 4-piston brakes on, I think 180 is good enough. Decent brakes on these heavy bikes are everything, and they'll save your life. Putting cheap mechanical, poorly set up brakes on one of these bikes is a recipe for disaster. So what you want to be looking at is decent brakes all day long, decent tyres all day long. The stopping different distance on different tyres are completely mind-blowing. So what do you want to be looking at for your e-bike as far as braking, especially if your e-bike weighs over 25 kilos. Well, you want to be looking for 2 piston minimum and 180 rotors, and that's it. That upgrade could save your life. And to replace the brakes and the rotors to decent spec, 2 piston 180mm rotors, you're probably going to be looking at about £150, but you're getting good stopping with that.